today's it's kind of on hydration and electrolytes. I'm doing them as a bit of a combination, and I've been talking to a lot of people lately, kind of around like a hierarchy of health. And I think a lot of people try to focus on sort of the 10% of things at the top that don't really give you the biggest result, to be honest. And this will be a part of probably a bigger series on talking about the low hanging fruit that, if people actually prioritize, would probably give them much better bang for buck in terms of their health and getting them to their goals that are more often than not overlooked. So yeah, in terms of like the hierarchy of health, we clearly state mainly managing stresses, prioritizing sleep, obviously nourishing the body. An 80% ish whole foods diet is pretty good. Thinking of some macronutrients, mainly around, someone's total protein intake. But then the other two, which I think are often overlooked, and that'd be sort of hydration and someone's micronutrients. And specifically today, we want to focus on some of the electrolytes that are a part of that micronutrient group. And then that kind of forms our basics, or let's say, in terms of someone's wellness routine, obviously with some movement in there as well. So, why I think most people understand that hydration is reasonably important. Do they prioritize it or not? I don't think people drink as much as they possibly could. And I think it's mainly due to a habit more than anything. But it's really essential, like in terms of all the goals, but in terms of optimal health, like it is the process of like maintaining adequate fluid levels, which helps us with all our physiological functions. And I think in terms of a lot of these avid gym goers that we see, if you're under sort of hydrated or slightly mildly dehydrated, everything you're doing is just less efficient at best. And, when results are so hard fought in the gym, something as simple as hydration can really make a big difference in terms of getting the results. So, it serves as a medium for a whole bunch of biochemical reactions. It helps regulate our body temperature, definitely transports a lot of the nutrients that we want, and hopefully removes a bunch of the waste as well. So it's pretty important. And I think it's a real low hanging fruit that could seriously improve a lot of things for people in terms of their optimal health. So it's kind of tap into dehydration. You only really need to be 1% to 2% of your body weight in terms of dehydrated. And that has a serious decline in sort of cognitive function. That's attention and memory, and, even some motor skills. And you'll feel a really intense level of fatigue, potentially headaches. You'll definitely see a decrease in exercise performance. So we see it a lot in the afternoon or on a hot day when somebody really has, not had enough fluid the day before, if not leading into that session that day. They find the session much more difficult than they would if they hadn't of. And it's similar, but probably not quite as severe as, being significantly underslept, which people find severely debilitating when they try to actually work out comparatively to when they get a great night's sleep. So I want to tackle dehydration in terms of like key goals that people have in the gym, and how it kind of relates to it. So fat loss being, it's one of the key goals that people come in with, and it's really crucial. It's crucial for your metabolism, the process, of your body converting that food into energy, and dehydration slows this down. So that makes it harder for you to lose and burn the fat. On that, you've got your lipolysis, which is actually just the metabolic pathway for breaking down fats. And dehydration actually impairs some of the enzymatic function involved in this process. So for something as easy as getting enough good fluid in, and being slightly dehydrated hinders a lot of the result that somebody's actually looking for out of their movement portion of their wellness routine. In terms of strength, well, your muscles, they're about 75% water. So dehydration severely limits how well they can move and perform, considering so much of them is the water that we're looking for. You will often get sort of fatigue and cramps, and you'll definitely feel the reduced strength and performance in your workouts. But some of the way that it does this is through maintaining electrolyte balance. So particularly sodium and potassium, which are crucial for muscle contraction and nerve signaling. Again, this is one of the key reasons you'll get that fatigue and cramps. In terms of your muscle mass and increasing it, which is definitely a goal that we have for most people. How much depends on the person, but good quality increase in muscle, you'll get some relative strength from that, has a whole myriad of positive benefits, is really reliant on hydration as well. And it actually helps transport a lot of these amino acids into the muscle cells to actually help with the repair and rebuilding of that muscle tissue. In terms of recovery, it should, if you're hydrated, help with a lot of like getting rid of a lot of the metabolic byproducts. So we're thinking post-exercise lactate and a bit of urea, but dehydration actually causes or exacerbates inflammation, and it makes it harder to clear these byproducts, which just slows down your recovery process. And in terms of sleep, we talk about sleep a lot in here, but we talk about sleep just because of the big bang for buck benefit that it has across all health metrics. And one of the ones in terms of sleep and hydration is the effect that it has on sort of neurotransmitter function and hormonal function. So your melatonin process specifically begins with an amino acid that's tryptophan, which that tryptophan gets converted to serotonin, and then that serotonin into melatonin, and hydration supports the efficient transport and conversion of these molecules in your brain and your pineal gland. So that's really important. And again, we kind of can't preface it enough. Results are really hard to come by just anyway. Like they take effort, but if you're not hydrating and you're not sleeping, most people are just shooting themselves in the foot, and often wonder why they can't quite get the results that they're after. And a lot of the time we need to look at the low-hanging big hitters that give people the best bang for buck, tackle those first, and then we can worry about more intricate things later. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I feel it when I'm dehydrated. Like if I'm presenting for work and for 6 hours straight, I don't drink a lot of water because I have to be running out to pee all the time. But by the end of the day, you absolutely feel the difference physically it makes.
Yeah, yeah. Like I can, if I'm on the gym floor, I do try to drink like a cup of water per client that I'm training, but I can just feel my judgment and just like when I'm trying to think and chat to somebody, just how much slower my brain is actively working comparatively than when I've actually prioritized it for the day, and what that looks like, which is, yeah, the slowness, or I get quite severe headaches too when I'm, and that's probably the biggest thing I notice straight away. But to improve your hydration, I want to talk about the sort of the interrelationship with our electrolytes. I would say proper hydration helps maintain the electrolyte balance, and that a lot of the electrolytes are really supporting our bodily functions. So, what are electrolytes is probably a good place to start. They're the minerals that carry an electrical charge, and they play critical roles in just a whole range of processes in the body. And each one have multiple different things that they do, but they're all really important. And getting good quality micronutrients, let alone your electrolyte consumption in, I think is really paramount. I put it up there with hydration a lot in terms of big heavy hitters. And when we're checking the in-body, it's one of the things I look for a lot. I'll check total body water to make sure that, the water levels are where they should, which gives us a good level of fluid, which means that a lot of our bodily functions or processes can operate better. And the way I like to think about it is if you're under in terms of your water consumption and your total body water, you're just putting stress on the body. So it's trying to do what it needs to with inadequate levels, or volume of water in the body. And I then look at the mineral consumption as number two, because you can have a lot of water, big tick, but if you don't have the right mineral consumption in the body or total amounts of minerals, then all those physiological processes that are relied upon from the minerals are then either underperforming as well as. So that's not beneficial for someone's long-term goals. That's why I look at both rather than just one or just total body water. There's a whole bunch of electrolytes, but the ones that I really want to focus on is sodium, potassium, chloride, phosphorus, and magnesium. And what are their functions and kind of what's the reasoning? So sodium, critical for maintaining your fluid balance. It has a critical role in nerve function and muscle contractions. And sodium is one of the primary electrolytes that's lost through sweating. So not a huge issue at the moment, considering it's 8 to 10 degrees in Melbourne. But as summer hits, becomes, or if you're in North Queensland, it will be a much bigger focus. Potassium is really important. Has a really critical interrelationship with sodium. They help with sort of transition of fluid between cells. Important for muscle function, nerve signaling, and maintaining fluid balance. You've got chloride, a really critical function for helping maintain sodium as well. It's involved in the production of stomach acid and plays a critical osmotic pressure role in acid-base balance, which we haven't delved into tremendously yet on one of the level ups, but there's a huge relationship between how acidic the body is and the relationship that plays, or the cascade that plays on optimal health, which we will get into in another level up. Phosphorus, one of the real big heavy hitters in terms of energy production, but it also helps buffer acids in the body, which is really important. And magnesium, probably my favorite nutrient of all. I talk about it a lot. If I could only take one supplement, it'd be up there in the tussle for the top. Involved in hundreds of enzymatic reactions. Does a lot of things from supporting muscle and nerve function, helps regulate blood pressure. It contributes to energy metabolism. It's got a role in stress and nervous system support. Yeah, it has things to do with like the DNA and in productions of proteins. It's a really magical nutrient, and yeah, it's one of the big things that I want people to get out of their electrolytes as well. Do they all make sense so far?
Yeah, absolutely. I think after you did your magnesium level up, I started taking magnesium every day because it was so compelling, all the stuff. I can't remember all the specifics, but it was really compelling in terms of adding that as a supplement.
Yeah, and what I like to do is educate people on certain nutrients, whether it's our big macros or our really important micronutrients, whatever the vitamins and minerals are. Like, I don't think people kind of attach to the food and what it does when we ingest it and hopefully absorb it, that they're actually just messengers that you know are lock and key, and they initiate functions in the body. And if you don't get the right amounts in, there's just functions that aren't happening, or they're happening really inefficiently. So at best, it's inefficient. At worst, you're getting a body that's under stress and duress from the lack of nutrients that it's got, which causes internal stress on the body. And when the body's under that internal stress, that's when things start to go astray in the body. And there's a whole different way of symptoms that can come from that, or ailments that come from that. So if people understand some of the processes from some of these nutrients, hopefully they can then think about them slightly differently, whether it's from whole foods or supplementation. Like, I don't really care. I just care that people are getting them in first, and then we can worry about the other stuff a little bit later. And I think we've discussed this, actually. We discussed this the other day, just how low the fruit and vegetable intake is out there. Let alone like an 80% sort of whole foods diet. And for those who are listening, I think you'll know the stats better than me, but it was sub 10%, wasn't it, for adults getting enough fruit and veggie?
The latest data from the ABS is 4.1%.
Was 4.1. Oh, makes 10 look good. Like, that's such a astronomically low and frightening statistic. So it makes, and then it's why we attach so much weight to things based on when the level of fruit and veg is 4%. It's not surprising the high prevalence of chronic disease and whatnot that's out there in the community. And it's not just fruit and veg specific, but there'll be other stats that are just as tough to swallow out there in a whole wide range of metrics that we could cover which I might actually do on a level up to give people framework as to why the health of people is declining so rapidly. And big heavy hitters like sleep, hydration, and just getting in some electrolytes will make a significant difference in someone's well-being. So when it comes to electrolytes specifically, there's a couple of things that I would preface, and then you can get them from natural sources. We love that. Things like things like leafy greens, amazing, high for magnesium and potassium. Bananas, amazing for potassium. I think everyone knows that. Coconut water is fantastic. Natural balance of electrolytes. It's high in potassium, magnesium, it's got some sodium. Making sure that it's a low sugar version, because there are a lot of coconut waters out there that people think are healthy, but have 20, 30 grams of sugar in whatever the drink is. So while in one benefit you're getting the electrolytes, sure, you're kind of 2 steps back with the total amount of sugar that is in that, the calorie density of that drink, and the stress response from just such a high blood sugar hit you get from that coconut water. So it can be a bit of a tricky field for people, but anything under 10 grams of sugar I'd be okay with. Anything under 5 I'd be ecstatic with, would kind of be my guidelines on coconut water. You got some dairies out there and rich in calcium. Nuts and seeds, I think everyone knows how good they are. Super high in magnesium, phosphorus. Thinking almonds, you've got pumpkin seeds. I know that you specifically love to get a little like super food seed mix together. I couldn't recommend that highly enough for people out in the community. Really great way to condense your nutrients in any specific meal at any time, really, and you can keep adding to it, which I know a lot of people do. In terms of specific supplementation, I'd preface caffeine free or stimulant free would be a good place to start. A lot of people like it for, the boost of alertness and whatnot. You'll find often caffeine, guarana, taurine are 3 of them, the staples, I guess, that if they want to put a stimulant in, they will. I like to avoid them, if I'm being completely honest with you. They can cause jitteriness, they increase your heart rate, and that can make people feel quite uncomfortable, which is not ideal. And I think I would prefer people to rely less on caffeine and stimulants to be alert and awake, which normally masks a habit somewhere else in their day that we could actually work on to get them to optimally function. That's my real big heavy hitter in terms of coaching someone through that. We've already spoken about it, but avoiding sugars as much as possible. It's going to really spike glucose and insulin. It's going to, whenever you get that big spike, it'll come down with a really big crash. It has a myriad of negative health consequences. Mainly, you'll have energy crashes, puts a real impact on your nervous system. Normally, it comes back with more cravings because of that, which tends to lead to weight gain, none of which are in what most people want. And there's a lot of fillers that are in supplements. There's a wide array of poor quality supplements out there, all the way through to great quality. Deciphering them is a bit of a minefield for people. And I think I'll do another level up on what to look for and what that looks like, because just like reading a package of food, I think supplements are equally to blame for promoting terrible health with what's in a lot of them. And fillers play a real crucial role in that we're not, they're just not necessary, and they're just bulking out a product, and normally at the detriment to, some form of allergen. They'll impact the gut, they'll cause inflammation, and they'll cause some form of stressor in the body, all of which means at best, you're just not absorbing it very well. At worst, you're getting a real negative health consequence based on what's happening from the filler or the artificial ingredient that they've put in. So in terms of what I'd want someone to take out of today, it would be that big heavy hitters, the lowest hanging fruit for them, are the things that I'd always focus on first. For this specific talk, it's been about getting hydrated. there's a whole bunch of ways to do it. You need about 2.5 to 3.5 liters, maybe 4 liters. It's individual. Men tend to need a little bit more, but the more muscle mass you're carrying, how much exercise you're doing, all of that makes a big difference. I like to say put in an extra 500 mil per workout that you have. And I like to say put in an extra 250 mil for anything that's got a serving of caffeine in it as well. So that's every sort of coffee, green tea, beverage, if you're having that has caffeine in it. And then aiming for about 2.5 to 3.5 liters will put most people in the driving seat for staying hydrated just on total amount. I would preface that getting in regular or frequent amounts of water is better for you than just gulping down 2 liters at the end of the day. The body doesn't absorb it quite as well as it would with just the frequent top-ups. And you'll feel tremendously better from the frequent top-ups, which we talked about earlier. You really don't want to get it to a point of you're starting to feel the effects. It takes a little bit to reverse that. It definitely won't be instantaneous. That's for sure. Prefacing some of those good quality whole foods that we spoke about in every meal, getting, as we discussed, good serving, a couple of serves of fruit, a serving of veg in every single meal at a minimum. And that'll put you in good stead to getting in the right micronutrients, let alone your electrolyte balance. And I've got an electrolyte that I use that I just put a scoop in the morning and a scoop in the afternoon. And I just have a liter bottle that I carry around. And I try to drink 4 of those in a day. 2 of the 4 will have electrolytes, 2 won't. And that's a pretty good way for me just to easily top up my electrolytes without having to, think about my full composition of whole foods, which makes life a bit easier for me. There is a pretty good natural one that works pretty well, and it's about, let's say it's a liter, so it's about 800 mil of water. You then put in 200 mil of like a low sugar coconut water. I'd put in like a squeeze of lemon and like a pinch of salt, and Himalayan rock salt's really good. Celtic sea salt, all of those are really good versions of your salts, and that'll give you an amazing electrolyte drink as well. The reason I use subs is just, to be honest, it's easier, and it's just one less thing that I have to think about in terms of my wellness routine comparatively to, do I have a good sugar-free coconut water floating around, and am I going to actually do the mixing? For me, probably not. So I'll just take the supplements, but when I can, like on the weekend, I will. Do you take anything away from today, Jeffrey?
Well, you've just answered one of my questions was, apart from if you've got something like gastro, when would you be taking electrolytes? But it sounds, you're having them most days, it sounds like.
Yeah, like the gold standard for me would be go and get your blood work done and actually check if you've got an imbalance in the first place. And then you could specifically supplement one of the electrolytes. That would be by far the gold standard. Outside of that, I take magnesium every day. I don't take it specifically for its electrolyte properties, but I take it for the myriad of health benefits, mainly around stress and nervous system support, which then promotes sleep for me. So I take 400 milligrams of magnesium every day. If I'm being really switched on with my magnesium at the end of whatever type I'm taking, I switch to a different type just so my body gets a slightly different benefit. That would be my gold standard for myself. And I take more electrolytes under times of stress. So for me, with a young baby, if he's particularly not sleeping well, I'll really prioritize. I might have 3 scoops, maybe 4 scoops of electrolytes if I really need it, just because under stress and strain, the body is having to work harder. And when it has to work harder, it requires more nutrition. So on top of, I'll normally increase my calories to provide more nutrients for the body, or at least more energy. And then I'll preface more vegetables and fruit to get more micronutrients in. And then specifically for my electrolytes, because I know how important they are, I'll add in an extra scoop or 2 just to give myself the support for my body to be able to deal with the stresses and things like gastro. But any sickness that requires getting fluids in, I'll significantly probably double my intake of electrolytes. And if I'm doing anything exceedingly vigorous in my exercise, I'll add in probably an extra scoop to that workout. It can be just before, can be during, it doesn't really matter. And that would be for me anything that I would perceive an 8 out of 10 or above.
Right. Sounds like I should drink about
Yesterday been good.
10 liters of water with electrolytes every shift at work.
Yeah, it's just gonna support baseline physiological processes, which in times of demand go up. And when they go up, people often don't put more input into their body to be able to deal with whatever the demands are more. So I just like to try and stay on top of that, mainly to reduce the stress, like the internal stress load on my organs, on my systems, and on my nervous system, through some nourishment. And you could do, some CNS type restoration practices. They would also work, but in terms of pure nutrition, that's kind of what I do and tackle that. You could have used a scoop yesterday in our session, for sure. Maybe two.
Can I ask one final question?
Go for it. Ask as many as you like.
I know in some people in the whole food plant-based world don't like coconut because of the saturated fat.
Yes.
Would I be right in guessing that coconut water wouldn't actually contain saturated fat?
Doesn't take much. No.
No,
No.
it's water.
Yeah, just the
Yeah.
water. And
Yeah, okay.
just comes with a beautiful amount of electrolytes. Like I'm all for coconut water. I'm just not for people not putting the high sugar content of any of the sports drinks, vitamin waters, whatever they're touting as, because you're kind of getting one benefit for sure, which is the electrolyte composition. You're getting a myriad of negatives from just the sheer amount of sugar that's floating around. And yeah, I think if people thought about it a bit differently, I think it's I'm saying I'll do a lot of level ups, but I think foods, hidden foods that people perceive as health foods that aren't, or versions of them that aren't, might be a really good level up, because there's so many of them out there that stump people, that are really hindering either just their health, how they feel just in general, and their results. And yeah, it's a tough one for people out there. But with some awareness, they can make really simple changes, and it makes a massive difference to all of those parameters. Beautiful. That is it for today. I've taken too much time as always. But thank you for joining me today, Jeffrey, and for anybody that listens to this on repeat. I really hope you got a better understanding of electrolytes and why I personally deem them just so important in any nourishment routine, but specifically why I think electrolytes should be a part of your daily routine as well.